with external Adie. And it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I do try and be as honest as I can. I mean, it's scary that there are people in Primordial Radio who called me the voice of reason. I thought, how bad is this world if you think I'm a voice of reason?
Maybe you are and you've not realized that. Because we are like, well, personally as well, it's whenever someone pays me a compliment, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm not that. Like, what? Because I don't believe in myself, and it sucks sometimes because so many things that I've put off doing because I never believed in myself.
Yeah. I know where that is. There's something called imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Where you compare yourself to your peers and think your peers are much better than you, and without noticing that they're actually complimenting you as well. So I think we discussed this through private message or online somewhere a few weeks back, and it's really tough. And if you've got that constant doubt in the back of your head, and you have, what I hate is over positivity. I'm sure, you can do it, nothing's impossible, stuff like that. And I always sit there and go, there's loads of things that are impossible, like drinking the Pacific Ocean through a straw is impossible. So stop saying nothing's impossible. You just have to be realistic about your goals. And one of the things I've had to learn is be realistic.
I get that, absolutely. And it's like when I always say I'd rather be surprised than disappointed, because I'd rather sort of like, oh, that worked really well, rather than that, oh, that didn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just, I know it sounds a little like negative, but I'd rather be a realist than otherwise.
A pragmatist. Yeah, pragmatic approach to life is always a good one. I mean, it's okay to say, oh, yes, I'm going off to Hollywood to become a major star. But the reality and the pragmatism is you've got to get there. I think there's a real problem in the arts in the UK where I see some fantastic actors and actresses on many shows, and I sort of go, wow, they're really good. And then I Wikipedia them. I'm sure other people do this. And the first thing it'll say is granddaughter of the first baronet of Normandy or something. And you're like, oh, right, okay then. There's a bit of money in the arts to get to. So I know I had a friend at school, and he ended up at RADA, and he was a superb actor, and I think he was a struggling actor for a number of years, whereas his peers, who may have had a bit more, shall we say, influence, progressed. And I've always felt that's distinctly unfair, because there's some brilliantly talented people out there. I mean, I always say whenever I present a show that I'm the talent that puts the word talent into talentless. Okay, because I don't think I'm a talented person. I think I'm an idiot who speaks up. And that's all my comedy background is just speaking up on things and taboo subject. And for some reason, people seem to like it and listen to it. So I go, okay. There's no craft in that. So I'm not a joke teller. I'm a story creator and things like that.
Yeah, so that's when, Dr. Porridge was created. So yeah. Well, what's behind that then? How did that come about?
Well, I think I ought to break a myth here, actually, because I think everyone thinks that I created this character and then became a stand-up. I actually created Dr. Porridge to help a community. So when I first joined the steampunk community, in the first year, I was introducing myself as Adie, and there were loads of people online, because it was quite big, 8 years ago. And loads of people online were saying, oh, I'd love to come and join in, but I don't know anyone. So I'm afraid of meeting people. And so I thought, well, there must be a solution to this. So I created this character called Dr. Porridge. And a lot of people think you have to have a surname or you have to have a name in steampunk. You don't. There's very few of us that actually have names. And I said, well, I'll create just as a joke, something called Dr. Porridge. And he's based on the character is based on plucky British failures. So Captain Oates went outside, didn't come back, plucky British failure. And some sort of sharp characters. So I announced on the page, well, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know anyone there, just come in and ask for porridge. And so people would walk into the pub, go, is porridge around? And then I'd go over, say hello, ask them their names, and before they knew it, just announce to the pub in the loudest way I could think of, which is my very Brian Blessedy voice, and say, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, please make them feel welcome. And that worked, and it was really good. It was really good. And then I sort of went, well, I'll create a page. And the first page I did, it was for my leatherwork. So I used to do leatherwork as a hobby, and it was to sell stuff. And I sort of created, I think it was called Dr Porridge's Crafty Creations or something like that. And then I had a go doing some stand-up as Dr Porridge. So I changed the page to Dr Cornelius Porridge. Mm-hmm. And it just grew. It just grew and grew and grew and grew. And I was expecting like 100 people might follow it, and I'd have been happy. And then suddenly it went to 500, and then 1,000. And then I think we're on like 1,750 now.
Yeah, that's correct.
And it's just growing and growing. And I'm like, but all I'm doing is just saying satirical things about politics. I mean, I love politics. I know it's probably one of those things you should never talk about, but I think one of the problems in politics is no one ever talks about it. And you should, as long as you respect other people's opinions, that's fine. So I now use my platform I don't comment as much on steampunk anymore. I sort of comment on politics, because I got to a stage where I was struggling with trying to entertain people within boundaries of, I hate to use the term woke, but there is an element of that. You say one thing and you offend someone, and you've got to be mindful of that. Mm-hmm. But then some people take offense on behalf of others, and that's my big pet hate. Mm-hmm. So I did a joke about autism, which I often do, and someone said, "Oh, but you don't know anything about autism." And I thought, well, that's a nice assumption. And I like the comedy. Even if you listen to my Lost in Porridge show, the joke is always on Porridge. Porridge is a naive idiot who thinks he's better than himself. So he thinks he knows everything. He thinks he knows how to deal with problems, and he always cocks up through a failure to understand the situation, which in a way is an extension of who I am, because being autistic, you tend to cock up because you don't always understand the situation. So that's where Porridge came from, to help a community. And then I just transferred it over to the metal community. And my Lord, there've been... the current metal community of Primordial Radio is like the steampunk community that I first joined years ago. And I've sort of drifted away from the steampunk community because there's been a lot of infighting, as any sort of movement occurs. Yeah. And there's loads and loads of thoroughly nice people in there. But I'm really wary now I'm an unintentional leader. And I hate to say that because it sounds arrogant. But for some reason, people listen to what I say. And I try and stand up for a community rather than one person's ego. But then people accuse me of being egotistical or arrogant. And they don't really know who I am because they just see the character of Porridge.
So would you say that, there's Dr. Porridge, there's Adie, two different people?
Oh, yeah. Porridge is a character created for the sole purpose of entertainment. But they do cross over. I mean, I respond to Porridge in the pub now. Or if you're walking down the street, I was walking down the street in, where was it? London. First time I've been to London in ages, and someone shouted Porridge at me, and I was like, what? And it was... So
you got recognised? Oh, yeah. That?
It's very odd. I signed my first autograph last year.
Wow, okay.
Someone came up and said, "Oh, can you sign?" We had these sort of passports, and I said, "Why do you want? What do you mean you want an autograph? Oh, can you sign it? You're Dr. Porridge." And I was like, "Yeah." So I signed it, and I felt, "Oh, blimey, that's the weirdest feeling in the world." And even in such a small community as, say, steampunk, with probably 10,000 in the world, or 10,000 in the UK, it's nice to be recognised. But one of the things I had to learn quite quickly was you can't let it go to your head. And I did that for a little bit, if I'm honest. About 6 months, I became a bit more arrogant and a sort of, don't you know who I am? And I performed at the Asylum Festival, created the Bishop of Squid. And I had to check myself. And it was my friends that said, no, you need to rein it in. Go back to what you were doing, which is looking after the community. You're not above the community. And I think that was an important life lesson. And it's done me the world of good. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who would say, well, he's rubbish. He's talking rubbish. But yeah,
You can't please everyone. That's the thing. You can't please everyone.
Now, before Christmas, when I had the incident, one of the big problems was porridge. I didn't know what direction to take it. I didn't know whether I should just stick with steampunk or do what I wanted to do, which was be satirical and dig at politicians. And I have this view that you punch up in comedy, you don't punch down. It's just one of my things. And politicians, I'm afraid, are the ones at the top that are very readily available to punch up. And much the same as I am. I mean, someone should be able to punch up at porridge. And I have seen people try it, and I just go, yeah, fair enough. Don't let it get to me. But I really, I got very depressed. I think it's on record quite well that I got very depressed before Christmas. Yeah. And it just wasn't making me happy. Porridge wasn't making me happy. I nearly handed the whole thing in. And I went, no, this isn't good. Do what you want to do. And if you upset people and lose people, that's something, because you can fall into that trap on social media of going, oh, God, I'm losing followers because I said this. And I thought, no, stuff it. I only wanted 100.
That's it. Yeah. Do you know what? I can relate to that because I guess like with podcast and radio work and everything that I'm currently doing.
Yeah.
Basically, like, let me just go back a little bit. So when we went into lockdown, I honestly thought the world was going to end. So yeah, sounds ridiculous, but I thought the world was going to end, and I thought, oh my God, like, what's happening with the whole like COVID stuff and whatever. And I was just like, well, if something bad happens, like, I don't want to go without doing the things that I've always wanted to do, but my anxiety and depression, stopped me in the past. So I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to do the things that I want to do and see where it takes me. So started, got involved in radio with Feedback Radio, and started doing, doing these shows because I've always loved radio broadcasting. I studied radio broadcasting as well, and I've always wanted to do it. And radio's always been a passion of mine, and music's always been a passion of mine. So I just thought, I want to do this. So I'm going to try and see what happens. And luckily it's going all right. But, with the podcast, I was always putting it off. The past, it took me 18 months to sort of like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And, well, here we are now. But
yeah, no, it's brilliant. Thank you for letting me on.
And I was just like, I was into a depression that I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it. What's the point? It was the whole, what's the point doing this? No one's going to listen to it. It's just little me. Who cares? But I guess I thought to myself, I'm not going to do this for anyone else but me. And that's when things changed. When I started doing things for me, then if people are on board, if people like it, great, bonus. But if I'm happy doing this, then then it is working. For me, at least,
Happiness is the only sort of ambition anyone should have in their life, really.
Yeah.
Be as happy as you can be with what you have.